Hi everyone, Rhonda Carnegie from Project Dandelion, and really excited to have this conversation. And as we get into it, you know, one of the questions that I always ask everyone is, what is your way into climate? You know, we really believe that climate is everyone's issue. It's the most intersectional issue of our time. And one of the conversations that we're going to have here is just understanding not everyone calls it climate. Some people call it poverty. Some people call it heat. Some people call it lots of different things. But what we're going to talk about here are solutions and the way into this conversation. I'm so excited to have two solutionists on the stage with me to talk about it. And so let's just start off talking about who you are, what you do, and why this topic is important to you as the candle is going out. So it's like it's creating a whole opportunity for you. Let's start with you.
Thank you.
Nima.
Thank you, Rhonda. Very excited to be here and very excited to be participating in these fantastic conversations since yesterday. I'm Nagma. I represent Edelgive, and we are a small foundation that was created 18 years ago with only one mandate that said we'll bridge the gap of resource between for-profit and non-profit. This was before the jargon had caught our fancy, and it was young entrepreneurs who'd made it big and who thought it's a good mandate to have. I joined in after 3 years. I'm a chartered accountant who hated being one, but the benefit of these two newbies, the foundation and me, was that we looked at philanthropy from a systems lens right from the start. So Edelgive, while specializing in gender and climate, works largely in creating large structures that can enable capital movement of impact and philanthropy to grassroots in India.
And we're going to break that all down. So that'll be really, really exciting, because I think some of the things that you're seeing on the front lines are amazing, and just in terms of the way in which we're languaging this, I think it's so interesting. Charlotte, how about you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
So thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. So my background is I'm the founder of Nordic Impact Lab. And Nordic Impact Lab is helping companies and investors in terms of understanding what the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance structure that it can drive, but also from an investment perspective, which is very dear to my heart, in terms of making sure that the investments that you make is not greenwashing. And we are working with a number of large foundations in Denmark, but then we are also, which I'm even more proud of to announce here, supported by Danish women in supporting the company in terms of scaling.
So you're really taking a look at it from the business side, and we were talking a little bit about renewable energy and being bullish about just the opportunities of some of the things that you're seeing out there. So let's sort of create a level set playing field for those people who may not understand what we're talking about here, to bring them in. I always find whenever you can get women in a room, you can solve for anything, and we can tap into your expertise. So take us back a little bit into the inside of what you're seeing and what you're excited about for those here who want to follow along.
Okay, so this is a little nerdy, but that's okay.
Of course.
So what we're seeing right now is that the European Union has created this amazing, very complex regulatory framework that is the EU taxonomy. And that is targeting both the investor side, but also the company side. And what they are asking companies to do specifically is to report on what their ESG profiling is. And this is going to be transparent so that there's a benchmark between peers, but also between industries. And then in this very complex framework, they have also put something in called the double materiality. It's one of these wonderful words that EU comes up with. And that means that a company cannot claim to be green just based on the product that it's selling.
Thank goodness.
It also means that it has to be responsible for the footprint that the company's operation have, both in terms of the positive and negative impact in the wider society and regions that they operate in. This then again means, and there's questions about this, that the companies need to answer in the taxonomy, that the companies need to answer how they are working with their value chain, their supply chains. And what we can see is, in a Northern European context, is that most companies understand their first tier. So that's the imminent, often it's in the same country or imminent neighbor countries. But what the taxonomy is asking the companies to do is move out to the second and third tier. And then suddenly in the third tier, you are outside of Europe. And then if you're a textile company, that means that suddenly you have to reach in and understand your suppliers in India and Bangladesh, and labor laws that is like the way that we do business in Europe suddenly has to figure out a way to align with the realities of India, for example. And that's the risk element. And this is where it starts to be really interesting for somebody who's investment keen, is that the risk element then becomes aligned with a valuation of a company. So the more that a company understands its risk in their entire operation, the more it affects the valuation. And we can probably say that here, the investment community has not always been the fastest to pick up on new trends, but this one they have picked up on. The thing with the risk and the valuation has created a new way of thinking among the financial institutions and the investors. So for example, in Denmark, the largest bank earlier this year announced that companies that do not have strong ESG strategies, they will refuse them to take them in as new B2B clients, but also current clients can expect to get a red card. So it's a major transformation that is happening right now. And this is what we're seeing. It's early days, it's difficult, their CEOs, their board members are struggling to figure out what to do, but it's going to be super interesting.
So I just want to break that down because it is really interesting, which is what you're saying is that regulation is serving as a catalyst to the market in terms of change. And many times businesses are using their supply chain or their value chain in order to achieve that. Mm-hmm. And as you get down to first tier, second tier, third tier in your value chain, there are some considerations you need to really consider. Yes. But really, regulation is really a positive driver. And I assume you as a CEO, just really thinking about what is the whole system and how you can play in that, really presents a really interesting opportunity for you going forward as a solutionist.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. You know, I say oftentimes it's like if we're at a dinner party, we're having these conversations, it's like it gets to be really complex. And so really like decoding for all of us where we think the opportunity is. Well, let's go down on the ground now, you know, and I want to come back to a really interesting conversation the two of you had in our prep about textiles, because I think that's a really specific opportunity. But, you know, in the work that you are playing as this really go-between, in a way, when I don't want to say go-between, because you're really serving as a very important advisor between how philanthropy is trying to understand community-based investing and actually what you're seeing on the ground for what that means, and just even getting people on the ground to apply for this kinds of things, that your insights of sort of like just laying out that playing field for us would be super interesting.
Well, thank you. It's been a journey of realization, really. I've been doing this for 13, 15 years, and it started, if I try to break down, with observing that even within a country like India, which is supposed to be one country, every 100 miles, 200 miles, the context changes, the problems change, and therefore whatever, even if we're doing the same intervention, the response is different. And if we're talking about one country in this way, then the world is a huge playground, and any cookie cutter models, anyone who says that, you know, we will do this and we will get these 5 outcomes, it started becoming a little unbelievable. Like, we have to try, but there is simultaneously, we also see a sector that speaks positively, but also is very risk-averse while we keep saying that we fund risk and we like risk and we want to support risk. So that creates a bit of a capital need divide. That's like problem one that we saw, which means that most grassroots organizations are cash-starved, fund-starved. Sustainability is a concept that they have to try to explain, but their models are not sustainable financially. So they're highly dependent on a fairly agnostic environment where they know the change theories, but they don't have enough money for it. And then there is an entirely different universe of funders, and I found funders in every world are the same. It's not, in the global south or the global north. The fact is that funders and philanthropists, while coming out of great concern, are very distanced from these problems. Sometimes I've never seen it in play. Sometimes I've only heard about it. So it does become very difficult for them to understand what risk looks like, what should be funded, what not should be funded. And there lies one of the big problems that we don't see, that both of the stakeholders are not speaking about the same thing the same way, and therefore this divide. And to your point, so what my job is, or Edelgive's job is, to create structures where philanthropic money can find great grassroots. The last fund that we created, the grant fund, was aiming to find 100 great organizations in India, all small and mid-sized. So we're talking about those who can't tell their stories, who don't have access to great funding opportunities, but have been doing great work for years. And 40 funders came together, $15 million, and we said, yes, let's disburse this. We opened applications, did crazy outreach. We got 2,500 responses. And guess how many said they worked on climate? Just 3. 3 in a country like India, where everyone is actually working on climate. We've got crazy problems coming up. Every monsoon is devastating. The heat wave is devastating, and only 3 said they work on climate. And then we were delayed by 2 months because we opened up those applications, and we realized everyone is camouflaging their work under other terms that are more fundable, where they can say that we work for, poverty alleviation, or we work for, distressed children or women, under threat. So there is a huge problem of even identifying those that are working there, and how to create structures that find them. Now, the good news, because we are also talking about what is working. What is working is on ground, people are adapting in real life. They are managing climate crisis in real life. The unfortunate thing is funders don't know that work, and we have to find a way to trap that work and fund it.
So one of the things when we were talking in prep for it, we were talking about sort of like trigger words in climate, like adaptation and mitigation, and you had almost a visceral response to sort of these words that are being used, that in some way are working to unlock capital, but on the other you feel is so far away from the front lines. And I would love for you to
So the front lines don't understand this language. The ones who are really at it don't understand this language. And yes, the convenience of demarcating mitigation, adaptation, and now transition is good from an academic, scientific, frameworking perspective, but you have to make it consumable to stakeholders. Most funders don't understand what is adaptation and mitigation. And I'm not talking about, let's also make this very clear that if you've made it to this room, you've crossed a certain evolution barrier, so you know what we're talking about. But we're not talking to people in this room. We're talking about those who hold power and access. And there is unlimited amount of power and access available that we need to channelize. And all of us here are in some way or form working for it. So this language doesn't work. And even if we look at this language, we're not looking at the positives and negatives. The fact is, because this language is a barrier, people are adapting, and not always in a fashion that will work well for them. Adaptation has taken a very cruel term, like people have to live, they have to survive. For example, in a state of Maharashtra, because climate-based crises have made migration happen, women have to work in sugarcane fields, they can't take leaves, so they go for hysterectomy. There is a whole market of hysterectomy operators so that they can just take 1 week's leave, but then they'll have never to take leave again. That's climate crisis. When we broad base and block our work into just these 3 buckets and make the jargon so exclusive that all crisis seems like it's coming from carbon footprint or ESG, we're dehumanizing what it means to undergo climate crisis. And most of us who are able to speak about it have the wherewithal to manage it. Those who cannot manage it don't even know they have a climate crisis happening to them.
Yeah, I think that that is such a good point. I just want to clap for that because I just think that that is such a good point to really go to the people and to where this is happening. It's a people issue. Like the planet will probably be fine, but we might not be fine. And it is, if there's one thing that I would love people to stop saying, it's not climate change. It is the climate and nature crisis.
Absolutely.
And we are really working toward a climate-safe world that is livable for all. And the livable for all is where we have to be able to move the language forward. And we have to not be so fragmented. And I think you were talking about the language of how everything is so fragmented, and we are either focused on these tech solutions or catastrophes, and even with the SDGs, we're fighting for money back and forth, that it's really holding us back. I am encouraged by the business community in the form of regulation to really understand how entrepreneurs can really move this forward. And if given the opportunity, you begin to think about what does this look like. And I want to go back to the conversation that you had with each other, where you were sharing this, which I love, entrepreneurs coming together to say, here's a problem, let me come up with a solution. You were talking about textiles, you were talking about the value chain and how you go farther, but what can you do to solve some of these issues? So I want to bring everyone into this great conversation that you have. You're probably going, what was the conversation? But you remember the conversation about what you're having about textile. Let's set the stage for that conversation about textile. And I want everyone to experience what happens when two entrepreneurs come together to begin to solve around something like this.
Okay, let's
No
see
pressure.
if we can recreate. The first industry that the European Union is targeting in this new taxonomy is the textile industry. They don't think that they have done enough and be at the forefront. So there's a huge focus on that they should start really moving forward in terms of taking responsibility. And as I was saying, most textile companies, one way or the other, will end up in emerging markets.
Yes.
And they often don't have trusted partners where they can get reliable help or feedback or guidance in terms of having these conversations with their suppliers. And if I remember correctly, I was asking you if, could your organization be a help for some of the companies that we are working with in terms of being that bridge builder so that the textile companies can enter India, have the conversation with their suppliers, and translate what is probably also being said between the lines, because it's not easy.
Yes, it's not. So anything like this, and I had responded similarly, anything like this needs a civil society participation, which means business, civil society have to come together here. So what could happen back in India is we work with a large group of small organizations with migrant workers who are, otherwise abused by the system, and how to ensure that their social security, their fair wages, their employers are, they are shown the memo on what the law is. And so there is a very cool collaboration between civil society and shop owners and business owners, and in construction as well as textiles. And yes, if there are large manufacturers and brands who would want to engage with that group, that could be the beginning of something significant. Because anything that goes, if we keep our own agendas in the center, then you and I will never speak. Because, the country is different, mandate is different. You're talking to business, I'm talking to civil society. But if we focus on if the DNA or the core or the nucleus of our work is the community and the people, then we've got tons of collaboration within us. So that's something that we can work together on.
Well, thank you. I wanted to share that with everyone because what I've found in this conference so far, and it is my first, is the power of collaboration is so important, and the power of connection. And if we could imagine everyone who's here beginning to think about how we are a connected network in order for change, we can move faster, farther, and this is a perfect example of that. And I also wanted to thank you both for being dandelions, I know, and all of you for being dandelions. I know Mary Robinson talked about this. One of the amazing things about Mary Robinson is that she lives in all of these groups. She lives in the B team. She lives in Elders. She lives in Project Dandelion. And she's really trying to see what she can do to get all these groups to work together in order to, as she said yesterday, move faster, because we are on the cusp of an incredible climate change, but we're not moving fast enough, and we have to move faster.
Yep.
So the dandelion is resilient, and I just wanted to end this incredible panel on a video. Oh, you want to make another comment?
I want to
for
make
today?
one
Yes.
point,
Yes,
because
please.
it's very important when we're talking about collaboration and climate. And the point is a little radical, and we've been working on it for a year. So I have comfort in saying it. When we've come from different parts of the world with different realities of climate and what we see climate, as well as gender. No matter what we say, even if we are women, we don't have shared reality for many, many things. So we've to understand that as a context. When we think of climate, for once, let's shed the frameworks that we already, hear and are being taught and which have valid existence. But also look that everyone is joined to another by shared experience of their land. And so when we're looking at climate work, we're kind of shedding all the baggage of mitigation and adaptation and really plotting land-based crisis and how communities are responding to it. And that's the real next big project that Edelgive is working on. So for once, for example, if I'm sitting in Goa in India, I have more in common with someone sitting in Ixtapa in Mexico than I have with someone in Kashmir in India. Because that's what binds us. And that's something for all of us to think about, that a lot of our shared realities comes from the land we stand on and not the country we belong to. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing that. Any closing thought? You're good. Okay. All right, good. Well, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're all doing. Thank you for giving voice to this important movement. And with that, we'll play this short video.
Our climate is in crisis.
I believe we can solve it.
I'm clear-eyed about the challenges, and I choose hope.
I will be part of the solution.
I will share my ideas.
Above all, I will act.
I am a dandelion.
And like a dandelion, I am resilient.
I am relentless.
I will find any opening
In every path,
To make more dandelions.
Together, we will build a future.
where everyone is safe.
From a changing climate.
I am a dandelion.
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 I'm a dandelion. Are you?
Thank you. That was lovely.